me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
So how do you really make it genuine from the bottom up? I always support the idea of in-house strategic planning, master planning, even depending on the size and scope of the community or the department that you're in. At the same rec centers or things like that, I would suggest, we were talking about our backgrounds earlier, going into the community's places of comfort. So it could be the local church, the temple, the after-school program, things like that.
Welcome to the Daily Parks and Rec Show Leadership Series. Today, we're bringing you an incredible conversation with two of the most knowledgeable minds in the parks and recreation industry, Seve Ghose and Craig LeBlanc. In this episode, we're diving into the complexities of creating a living, breathing master plan and the importance of truly inclusive strategic planning. Seve will share his insights on how to get genuine community and staff feedback, moving past the usual squeaky wheels to connect with the entire population. We'll also explore how modern technology, from dynamic QR codes to advanced data tracking, is revolutionizing how departments collect input and make informed decisions. Plus, they'll discuss how to ensure that your parks are not only serving the local community, but also acting as a major economic driver for the region. Let's dive in. All right, any second. Okay, so we did not mean to exclude the planet from this great conversation me and Seve were having about our spiritual journeys and our upbringings and our classical educations. But I found out that Seve was big into track, which I was in javelin and discus.
Okay.
Anyway, continue. What sports, what events did you do in track?
So I did 100 and 200, and because of my speed, I could also do the long jump. And then to get points for our house, our boarding school was divided into 4 houses. I was in the blue house, Dewey. It was named after ex-principal Dewey. And so anything I could do to get points for the house, even if you placed third, you got some points, fourth, you got some points and so on. So that's what I did. But my favorites or my specialties were the 100 and 200. I still hold the school record in high school record in the 100? In the 100 meters, yeah.
What was your fastest time?
10:09. Yeah.
Oh, that is fast.
No, it was pretty good for those days on the cinder track, just the clay track, and
right.
With the longer spikes, and so on.
Yeah, one thing I loved about track is you had people from all different body types. Like the distance runners look nothing like the sprinters, look nothing like the shot putters and the throws, and then the pole vaulters were like people of their own world.
No, exactly. Yeah.
The jumpers, and it's crazy, but they all come together for one team of it's almost like an island of misfit toys of athletes.
Yeah, no, and then the friendships you make, and then when you visit the other schools that are in the system, and then you compete. That was the other best part of it, and you make some great connections with other places and so on, other students.
Yeah. Now, are you going to you going to be at NRPA?
The plan is, as of right now, yes, but because we did it as a way to get other staff potentially there, so I might pull out and have other staff go, but we'll more than likely, yes, I'll be there. Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you're not busy, I'm going to set up a little section for DPRS Media Company. We're going to do some live shows from it. Okay. And then I think we picked out a sports bar and a coffee house. I think on Tuesday, 4 to 6, we're going to do. I need to call the sports bar today and make sure that somebody hadn't booked it and that they won't book it to somebody. I don't know if they do that kind of thing, but if not, right across from the convention center, there's a sports bar that I think would be a great place for us to meet up in person.
I know that area fairly well. The International Drive, I think they call it.
Yeah, that's right. There's so many things there.
Yep.
Restaurants, and then it seems like they have like tiny hotels that also have somewhat of a convention center across the street to the left and the right, plus the big convention center. It's a nice area. I've been kind of looking through it over the weekend.
No, it's a beautiful area. And then if you go just further down that International Drive north, I guess, you end up in that little area where I think the name was Paradise, or like it's more for adult entertainment, meaning you have to be 21 to enter that site. There's lots of bars, restaurants, and things like that. So.
Well, yeah. Well, with that in mind, what would be the best location? Because I haven't picked one yet, but what's the best location we could do a little meetup for everybody that's come on the Daily Parks and Rec Show?
I think the easiest might be just meeting in a section of the convention center itself, because you might get a quiet spot, because not everything is in one place. It's kind of spread out, so you might be able to corner a spot,
Okay.
because
then
everyone is there, so that's why they
Right.
might have a hard time finding their other spots and things like that. But just a thought.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do is I'll just pick a little area of the conventions, because I know they have like little food courts and stuff in every convention I've ever been to. So.
Yes, yep. And they're also tied to the expo also, because the expo participants sponsor a lot of those lunch meals, like it's more finger food, but it's available for attendees,
Right.
as a way to get them into the expo hall, so.
Yeah. I may just have to get some kind of DPRS MediaCo flag or something to so people can see where we are.
Or a banner, or a little, yeah.
Little flag or banner.
No, that'd be great.
I had one of those for my for some of my other companies that I would attend conventions for. But now I got to go dig those up because I've been retired for so long.
Yep.
But all right, well, let me go ahead and play our little promo. I'm still wearing out this thank you video because it's so great, even though we're now
it's awesome. Yeah.
220 or 219, I think this one is. But I'll play that. I'll play something for our partners, and then maybe we can chat about that a little bit.
Yep.
And then we could talk about Parks and Rec till the end of time with Seve, because he's got so much knowledge. So we'll pick a topic and go for it.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. From a simple mic in a rec center to a full-scale media company for the people who power our parks. 200 real stories, 5 original shows, and more to come, with one powerful mission: to lift up the voices of Parks and Rec professionals across the country. From maintenance crews and young interns and youths who love sports, to directors and public servants making a difference. We've built a platform that honors the unsung heroes behind every clean trail, every weekend tournament, every safe, welcoming park. This milestone isn't just about the content, it's about the people, the passion, the purpose. To every guest, listener, and supporter, thank you. The next chapter starts today. This is DPRS MediaCo. Media for public service. All right, so before I play my next one on the partners, I just wanted to give a big shout out to our 3 full-time digital content creators. These are digital artists that are now full-time employed by the daily Parks and Rec show, now DPRS MediaCo. And it's crazy when you take an artistic mind and have them edit and help create and co-create content on one subject matter, how well they can understand our story in a short period of time. So none of our content creators, they're just like talented artists. And then you say, all right, sit down and 8 to 10 hours a day, full time, just help us tell the story of Parks and Recreation, and how good they've gotten at the messaging and just by editing hours upon hours of videos and content, from hearing from the directors and their story. They're just getting so good at telling it.
No, this is amazing. I mean, I can never tire of watching that clip, so it's awesome. Yeah.
They're working on about 4 others.
Oh, good.
For the leadership show, for the partner show. We love a lot of the storytelling and theme that went along with our 200th episode. So we're going to incorporate that into the What is DPRS MediaCo kind of stuff. And so I love watching these different versions come out. Okay, so the next one I'm going to play, the floodgates are now open, because we've started letting the word get out that we are looking for 12 strategic partners to help us co-create 12 shows for the industry that are specific to the parts of the industry that are very unique. And so if it's kind of like if we create a standalone show on finances in Parks and Rec, it's going to be completely different than the urban forestry show. But, people spend decades in urban forestry of Parks and Rec, never touch anything else. And same thing with our bookkeepers and accountants and finance people and all the consultants that go along with that. And so we really need the resident expertise in each of those areas from our vendor community to help us, create something special for the entire U.S. community of Parks and Rec professionals. So this is our first stab at what we're trying to do with this little 120-second promo. But now our LinkedIn profiles is blowing up with vendors that want to help us co-create this. And I thought it would be more like pulling teeth to get vendors to want to help out, but no, they're like, nope, we're in. How do we learn more? So I'll play this and then we'll come back and chat a little bit about that.
Okay.
Are you a vendor, brand, or service provider ready to connect with the heartbeat of local communities? At DPRS MediaCo, we tell the stories shaping parks and recreation across America. Through podcasts, live streams, videos, and newsletters, we reach frontline leaders, city directors, and decision makers every single week. From youth sports and facilities to programming and policy, our audience is your audience. Sponsoring or partnering with DPRS MediaCo puts your brand in front of the professionals who build, budget, and buy for their communities. Launching a new product, growing your presence in public spaces, targeting cities, counties, or departments, DPRS is your trusted media partner. Whether you're in software, turf, aquatics, robotics, smart cities, or special events, partnering with DPRS puts your brand in the story. With commercials, interviews, social campaigns, newsletters, and live shows, we're your media team. Partner with us and grow your impact in the $200 billion parks and rec industry. DPRS MediaCo, stories that move parks and rec forward. Your audience is here. Let's meet them.
Yep, another great one. Any thoughts on that one? I've got a few things I'd like to say.
No, I mean, and again, it's a all-encompassing topic too, as far as like how many different directions can you take the conversations. I just made a quick list here. I've got 14 different topics right on that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, 14 different groups that you could connect with, to have 14 different perspectives, at least at a minimum. That's just my list. I'm sure somebody could come up with 20 or 30 and so on.
Yeah, I've got 12.
Yeah,
and I'm sure there's overlap over here.
Yeah, I'm sure there is overlap too. Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is, let's just take a complex topic like master planning. And so let's say you're a consultant that helps that a Parks and Rec department would hire to create a master plan. And if we could create a simple framework that any city could kind of get started on the thought process and getting in the right people before they even choose a consultant, I really think we could create something valuable, especially for the smaller cities that don't have a big budget, might have 5 employees or staff members in the Parks and Rec department, and almost create a great playlist. When you're getting ready, maybe next year, you're going to do a big 10-year master plan. There's a lot of groundwork that needs to happen. And so we'd be looking for a partner that does this for Parks and Rec departments to help us create that content, that educational content, help us create 12 shows throughout the year, 12 hours of explanation, because this is not a simple topic of master planning. It's not like you can just go online and get a free PDF and then you're done. Right. It's a big, heavy lift.
And not just the lift, but the nuances for, like you mentioned, the smaller towns are the ones I usually think of, because many of them, they end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, but typically the plan sits on the shelf. So how do you make it practical enough that they feel empowered to, like, oh, I need to pull out the plan and get an idea of how I'm going to approach this challenge or the issue that I'm facing today, and so on. So it's not just the typical master plan that has park designs and park ideas. It's more all-inclusive of how else other challenges and issues. Even a master plan should even talk about the financial viability of the department 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But sometimes we leave that to a financial plan, and very few master plans include that piece. It's more about new things, and I'm thinking we have a lot of things. Let's make it better, and so that might be the approach to take, So. So I do support that and fully like that idea of creating a template for the master plan, especially for smaller agencies.
Right. Right. Because like you said, if we're not careful, like any plan, we put so much time and energy and effort into creating the plan, but then we never work the plan. So it's a dead plan. It's almost like dead on arrival, rather than being a living, breathing document that is worked, that is used, that is implemented, that is maybe even evolves over time. which is where you get the most out of your plan and using it.
And then also evolving it from the bottom up. So getting your staff involved at all levels, because you go to many cities, the larger cities, many of the staff are not involved in the master planning, and then even in the community piece of it, I call it the real large squeaky wheels that show up, and it's the same people that show up at every council meeting. And
Yeah.
somehow we pay so much heed and attention to just the one or two individuals that show up. The mayor might say, "Oh, Seve, you need to listen to so and so, and get that implemented or get that done." But the rest of the community is not, able to
Right.
impart its thoughts or ideas to us. And so, how do you really make it genuine from the bottom up? And so, I always support the idea of in-house strategic planning, master planning, even depending on the size and scope of the community or the department that you're in. But I think it adds more value when you have that level of buy-in from the staff and the community, because, and again, don't stage the master plan, rollouts or other meetings or the ongoing meetings at the same rec centers or things like that. I would suggest, we were talking about our backgrounds earlier, going into the community's places of comfort. So it could be the local church, the temple, the after-school program, things like that,
Mhm.
where you actually get more of the meat of the situation, rather than just the one or two stage meetings and you do the same, putting dots or sticky notes on the same things. I think you need to have a conversation like we're talking. I think we can get more ideas from these simple conversations
Mhm.
and making it genuine and recording them and actually, then
Right.
implementing them. So,
And this reminds me of the issues that some parks and rec departments are having with youth sports. You've got these really aggressive, well-funded, high-end sports. What do they call them? They're like these travel ball groups.
yeah, the travel clubs. Yeah.
Yeah. And these are more focused on D1 athletes that are going to get scholarships, and the grand vision is that their child ends up in professional sports.
Yes. Yeah.
But in hindsight, what we're finding is that's serving less than 1% of the community, that 99% of the community are not nearly athletically gifted enough with the genetics to ever become a D1 athlete.
Right.
And so if you're trying to create programs that include the entire community, if you're not careful, you'll create something that's made for 1% of the community, and the other 99% is going to be all the other degrees that are non-athletic, doctors, engineers, teachers, you know. And in the same way, you've got a small segment of the population that is very active in the local government, showing up at committee meetings. But I would say the majority of your population is never going to show up at these meetings. But if you go into a park and start interviewing who's walking, who's swinging, who's maybe the elderly community, who's using your senior care, who's signing up for your free swim lessons because they don't know how to swim,
Right.
who's attending the special event of the 4th of July celebration, that is your community. And that's
Exactly.
probably who you want involved in your master plan. But you got to go kind of like get them involved.
And that's my commentary on that, is that when we do hire a large company, and no offense to them, they do good work, but at the end of the day, I think the master plan is a plan, but it's not implementable in many cases. It's a good plan and so on, it has a lot of information, but is it really genuine? Are you really taking in the voices of the community members and so on? I think that's the piece, I think the missing piece in my view. That's and when I say the community, including, I'm talking about staff too, because when you do host these evening meetings, I would say 90 to 95% of the staff are not coming either, so
Right.
so are you scheduling extra meetings with staff? Very few master plans do that, and the ones that do are usually the stronger master plans too. So
Right. Yeah.
because the staff have to roll it out, they do the regular maintenance, they create the programs, they manage the facilities, they manage the amenities. So
Yeah, and as a former master, I guess I'm still a master electrician, but I would always look at these blueprints from these engineers, and I'm like, man, who designed this? They must have never built one of these before.
No, I agree. It's funny how you mentioned that. And that's my whole point, is the more inclusive we make it, it's more valuable to the community. And no matter whether it was made now for the next 5 to 10 years, but somebody could open it up 10 years from now and go, oh, this is still valuable. But I could open many master plans now. They're past its life cycle, meaning they were meant for that time, and then
Yes.
it moves on. And it applies to many communities that they might have had a rec center or a golf course or whatever amenity funded 10 years ago. They still haven't accomplished that, but then they still stick or hang on to that plan that was made 10 years ago. In my
Yes.
view, and especially post COVID, that plan is basically of no value currently. I think you have to rethink and restart the whole process again, and that
Yeah.
becomes expensive. Many communities
Mhm.
cannot afford to do that. So.
Yeah, and a great example in master planning that would make something not just irrelevant, but almost, I don't wanna call it illegal, but let's say it doesn't include any of the handicap ramps or how
Yeah.
now, what is that organization that now requires you to have certain type of inclusion involved, in
Well,
building?
it's a required piece from the ADA. So any
That's
facility you design, you have to adopt the tenets of the Americans with Disability Act.
Mhm.
And that keeps evolving too, because we continue to learn from our requests or challenges that we face, or different community members face. And that's why I think the community piece is so important, getting all the community members involved in the
Mhm.
very early stages, because they could point out things like, you might have spent $1 million putting up a wall somewhere, and they might go, that's not going to help me, and we have about 1,000 other members in this community that we're part of, and now we
Mhm.
cannot use this facility because you did it this way. It should have been done a different way. So
Right. And I think that's where having the living, breathing part of it is when something is living and breathing, it's real time adapting to the
exactly. Yeah.
real the current environment.
Correct.
And so I imagine even a consulting firm, they would love to come in to a department that's working the master plan with their frontline people that are implementing it with a clear understanding of the entire community and their voices have been heard. And then the consultant comes in and says, "Okay, y'all, the whole team's here. First of all, everyone's represented, including the people that are implementing it." And I think they can do their job so much better.
Yeah. No, I can share a quick story. In Davenport, Iowa, with the permission of the city manager, we were able to do our master plan and strategic plan fully in-house. The only thing was that I became the facilitator, so I had to keep,
Ah,
I couldn't say much. I just basically asked the probing questions and led the conversations. A small town like Davenport with 103,000 people, we used to get on the average, this was a 6-month process, about 100 to 160 was the high attendance from city staff, obviously department staff, community members. And we made it a point that we want to be very inclusive of everyone. And I can tell you that plan we adopted was very solid. I'm hopeful that they have adopted or implemented a lot of the tenets of it and gotten things accomplished, but just the way we did it, I mean, people felt so appreciated and bought into it, and not finding
mm,
out afterwards, oh, I missed that whole thing. I didn't know you guys were doing a master planning process or something like
yeah.
that. So
So 100,000 people
yeah.
in the community, and you're saying these meetings had 160 people show up, and that was a great number to have that many people show up?
Yes, because in most other communities, you might get, maybe 10, 12 of the same people that typically show up, whereas we were able to really probe, and we worked with our community partners. So, you talk about the diversity of the community. So, Davenport has one of the oldest LULAC clubs, which is the League of Urban Latin American Communities, and so getting involved in the Latin community, the African American community, we went to the churches and said, you need to attend these meetings. We even hosted a meeting at a church, a smaller meeting, just to learn, what they're looking for or what they've missed over the, 30, 40, 50 years, what they would like to see. So again, just being very deliberate and intentional of actually seeking out ideas, and no ideas were a bad idea. And then what we did was we listed all the close to, I don't know, 400 or 500 different ideas as an appendix to the back of the master plan. So no idea was forgotten, meaning we didn't judge them, like, oh, this is a bad idea, this is a good idea. All the ideas were included in the plan. So that's another piece to think about, because what might be good or bad or not doable now, but 10 years from now, 8 years from now, because of changes in, fads or fashions or, the community, it could become a requirement in that community that we do something that was listed on there. So yeah, we felt very, I guess, empowered. The staff felt like, oh, Seve, remember we talked about that, 2 months ago. They always, remind you or remind each other, and they're like, oh, we have it already in the plan. Let's do that, kind of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, and so I just kind of did the math on my calculator. With 100,000 person city,
Yep.
having 160 people show up from that community to weigh in on the whatever master
Yep.
plan,
Yep.
that's 0.16%, not even barely over a tenth of 1%.
Yeah, and those are the stage meetings. But again, I think we would have had maybe 16 show up if we just did the regular, basic meetings. And this was an effort again based on the input that we've offered to the community members in their places of comfort.
Yeah,
So no, it is a big challenge across. You're correct to cite that even when you announce public meetings, you get very few of the community typically showing up.
yeah. I've had several directors that every single special event they have and any big tournament they have,
Mhm.
when they have the food vendors and they have other like face painting vendors, or they have a farmer's market with all the food vendors and
Yeah.
farmers and stuff, they always set up a tent for the city, for the Parks and Rec department.
Yep. Oh,
And the marketing girl was there, the programming person was there, and the director was there, and they were just asking for feedback from all the things they do, whether
yeah.
it be, here's our programming, what are your thoughts on this? Here's like a checklist, can you see how we're doing stuff? And they would be getting feedback, and that's how uh, they wouldn't hold a committee meeting or something. They would just attend
Right.
all the events with a tent, and that's where they would try to get feedback from the community.
Yeah, you have a ready audience. No, absolutely. In fact, I just completed a business plan for a city up north. They're opening a huge sports complex in Oregon. And, one of the main things I suggested was at this complex, when you host tournaments or even regular league play on the busy days, like a Friday evening or a Saturday
Mhm.
and Sunday, just have, the person that's managing the site just walk around, even a quick survey, 3 to 5
That's it.
questions, make it very one word type or one number type question. And you get that feedback on, and they appreciate it too. I mean, the community appreciates that.
Right.
And if they're willing to share their email and other things, you can always continue that conversation into the next phase
Yeah.
too. And always have something to give away, because community likes free things. So you give away a 10% discount on the next reservation of the picnic shelter or something like that, that they can appreciate. And
Yeah.
the reason I suggest collecting as much information as far as like birth dates, or like, you don't have to get the exact birthday, but just the month. What you do is use that as a marketing ploy. Like a month before the birthday, you send out an email and say, hey, your daughter or your birthday is coming up. Don't forget, you could do it at our golf course. You could get 10% off if you reserve your tee times
Oh,
now
I
and
love it.
celebrate. So you preempt a lot of these things, and without being too intrusive. You don't want to be
Yeah.
too much in their faces, so to speak. But there's little nuances that I suggested in that business plan that they adopted for the city up in Oregon. So
Yeah. Yeah, because it really is easier for the city to come to the community than it is for the community to come to the city.
right,
And you've already got events that 5,000 people might show up,
right,
and you're doing 20 events a year with 5,000 people showing up.
right.
So why not just bring you're seeking their input, bring that event to the events that you're already hosting.
And
And
and especially on the larger events too, if there's folks from out of town that are attending like a soccer tournament or a baseball tournament, softball tournament, to even get their perspective is very important, because they might give you this fresh set of eyes. Look at something like, I drove in, I noticed that the parking lot is not signed, but you have a space for 400 cars. I didn't know where to go, where my field was. Those kinds
Mhm.
of things, would also be helpful, that you
Yeah.
might think, oh, we did the right things, but you didn't get the one perspective of a first time visitor that comes to your facility or amenity, and they have no idea where to go, especially if it's a
Yeah.
larger regional facility and so on. So
Yeah, you're right, because those people would never attend a, community event because they don't
no,
live there, but
right.
they are a big part of the economic driver because they're
Yep.
coming in town, staying in a hotel, buying fuel, eating at restaurants because 'cause they're not from there.
Yeah.
So being able to cater, making sure you're building something that attracts them is a way to get those economic dollars up.
Yeah, and now with the technology, QR codes and so on, and I'm learning too every day. It's not the old paper and pencil surveys anymore. You
Right.
basically give them the opportunity to get on a QR code and fill it at their leisure. Basically, there's no time constraints or anything like that.
Yeah.
And but I think offering that opportunity, I think, is the biggest piece. That
Yeah.
there are many opportunities offered. Whoever, if it's a first timer or a regular local person that comes to every event or every weekend, it's the same thing. But hopefully they don't feel pressured enough. But the point being that they're able to offer their thoughts, in
Yeah.
whatever way it might be. So.
Yeah, and you can actually airdrop these QR codes that are dynamic. So
Yep.
a QR code you can change instantly right there on the fly. You can open up the app. You can put in your 3 questions, and it can be just for that Saturday's farmers market. And you can only download that thing the day of the event.
Right.
And so, or you can have a little, the QR code, you can list it in different places and stuff. But yeah, it's crazy what you can do now versus having to print it out, hand it out, then
Right.
collect them. Like, yeah, those days are gone.
Right. Hey, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about economic drivers, a lot of these regional type facilities. Sorry to go back to that thought about the business plan that I recently
Yeah.
did, but it's also, we have talked about this, like economic drivers for the communities and so on. Even if you have a fourplex, like 4 soccer fields or 4 baseball fields, in many ways, for say, if it's in a community of 50,000, that could become an economic driver, because you could be, because of the quality of your fields, just host tournaments every weekend. I mean, and obviously league play or community play during the week, but on the weekends you become the tournament site, and that could become an economic driver. You could be surrounded by 4 or 5 towns, about the same size, but everybody comes to your town because you have the best fields. So you kind of create your niche market where maybe you raise the ante on your park maintenance and make the fields the best, because people remember those little things. Like in golf, you might score a 80 that day, but you're typically a 70s golfer, or scoring in the 70s. But if the greens were bad or the fairways were bad, that's what I remember as a golfer. It's not that I had a bad score, but I could say a lot of things about golf because it's a very technical sport. But I do remember what the condition of the green was or the condition of the fairway was. So,
Oh yeah, yeah.
So if you could raise that bar, I think it's a easy way to kind of gather a lot of information and also have a ready audience for it.
Yeah. Now with the way that we collect data, and the way that we all have these devices on us that can receive the data, that you can input it, you can send it back. It's like never have we been had the ability to be in touch, to get, bilateral communication back and forth from the people that are attending our events, real time, send them something that they could, give a response to, and then get that information back. And then now you can use that to build your community, build your special event, incorporate that into your master plan. I mean, all this technology and big data stuff has only been around for maybe 10 years as a stretch. I would say 5 years, we're really getting good at it.
No, and it's funny you mentioned. So here in downtown San Francisco, what we do is use a company called Placer AI. You are probably, and others are probably familiar with it. I'm learning more about it. So it tracks cell phone data,
Yeah.
And people say, well, your phone you might have your location off, but somehow the companies are tracking where you're going, so. And so we use Placer AI to track how many people are going through our Yerba Buena gardens on a regular basis, especially for special events or special weeks that we have. And it's as accurate as you can get. And then you do some formulas with it to add the kids that might have come with the family and so on. So there's formulas to add to it. But this way, you at least get the real data of how many cell phones were actually on our campus, on a daily basis. So it's very accurate. It even tells you, like, if they sat on a particular bench, then we can say if more people are sitting on that bench, that's a popular location for that bench. So we can change things, do things. So that's how nuanced and in depth it can get. Placer AI. So.
Yeah. And actually, we're working with one of our potential strategic partners is Apruva. He is the CEO and founder of City Data AI, and they have one customer. It is called Cities, Local Government, Parks and Rec. They have no other client segment. It's 100% of their client base.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah.
And they do something very similar to Placer AI. I think it's actually a direct competitor, but it's only $200 a month. For their starter package. And I think the most expensive one they have is around $800. I'm still learning a lot about it, but I mean, it's super affordable for a city to collect all that data that all of these apps are collecting, where you're from, how long you work there, how much you spend, how much time you spend at the park, how much money you spend on the park, how much hotel money you spend. And then our cities can really dial in their efforts to the places that are being used versus just kind of guessing that this is going to, affect the people that are using our parks.
It's funny you mentioned about the guests. We used to always say, oh, like you ask staff, like, hey, how many people came to your event last weekend? Oh, there were lots. So my question was always, what is lots?
Right.
But now we have tools in our disposal to, at least get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And then obviously a lot of these, the reason I bring this up also is that many of our Parks and Rec departments, we have a lot of legacy programs that have continued on for 30, 40 years. But typically attendance has declined, but people are still, enthused about it. The fact that we've done it for 30 years, we have to keep doing it. But they haven't, up the ante or changed the program to fit the times, And so I always argue so that the new softwares that are out there can help have that conversation, a much more genuine conversation as to why we should maybe even drop a certain legacy program or reinvent it in a different format, to collect the new community that's moving in or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And even having like a Park and Rec professional or a marketing girl stand up before, right after the Pledge of Allegiance or whatever they do to kind of kick off the game, they can say, okay, for all the parents in the stands, we're looking for input about the new playground that we're going to put right over there, about 100 foot that way. Yeah. You can, if you go into your airdrop, you can see a QR code, and we'd like to get y'all's input while y'all are in the game, and get real time input from your people. It's so quick and easy now.
No, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
we have a playground on our campus that still has 2 slides here that are the 30-foot tall metal slides.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, those are awesome. So we're not getting rid of it in our redo of the playground, and so people were asking, like, how do you get around it? I go, well, it's not getting around it. It's still viable as long as you have, safety and all of those pieces implemented as part of the whole setup. But at the same time, we also, what we're trying to do is make them ADA accessible. So we're creating like a ramp up, like a tree house kind of, like what do you call it, tree deck,
Right.
And allowing for access and things like that. So it's kind of neat, but we don't want to get rid of these 2 slides. The reason I bring this up is, again, most people might say when you first bring it up, like, oh, we want to put this or leave it alone at the playground. Oh, and you got to get rid of it. And I go, no, we have to figure out a way to still keep it, because that's our main attraction. Because how many places in the city, or in our case, the city in San Francisco or even around the region, have those 30-foot slides? Nobody, or very few,
Yeah.
So,
and those are the best. Like I wish sometimes my kids could go back and play on the playground equipment I had, because it was fun. It was it felt slightly dangerous. Like I didn't know how I was going to survive the landing, but there was a pile of kids like pushing each other over that slide. It was one of the most used pieces of equipment out there. So, and I don't remember any kids dying on it.
No.
Maybe just when I wasn't there, but we loved them.
No, and the reason, again, I bring it up is that I think as you do master planning or plan for the future, this is the kind of stuff that you have to kind of keep in mind, that it's not just discarding everything that happened in the past. I'm not saying that, but also updating it, changing it, and adapting to the new way of doing things, and especially post-COVID. I mean, things have really changed. People are devising their own programs because of the computer we carry in our hands every day. You might not even have to offer music or anything, at even a jazzercise class or a Zumba class. People can do their own thing as long as the movement is created by an instructor or something like that. Or you might not even need an instructor at the end of the day with AI and everything else now too. So, that's what I'm kind of suggesting, is that just look at the bigger picture, do more in-depth study into the communities, the members and the user groups and the partners, and then put that information together into a master plan that's more adaptable and also adoptable, meaning that you might create a great plan, but only 10 people are still showing up to your programs. How do you get to 100 people? That's the other piece. So,
shout out to, let's see, who came on just had a great phone call with, let's see, shoot, I can't find it. And it was a director that's he's a PhD that's doing some study about health and wellness and how Parks and Rec affect. Actually, look, we're past it. We're almost to the end, the 1/3 mark. Let me go ahead and play the YSM show promotion, and then we can come back and talk about what he's doing. It kind of ties into what we were talking about. Okay. But this is a promotion for the Youth Sports Mastery Show. Aaron Locks is an amazing person that spent 40 years in youth sports and just has an amazing company. Has partnered with hundreds of Parks and Rec departments to help bring on sports that you might not be the best at. So you might have great basketball, football, baseball, but maybe you're not great at pickleball, volleyball, lacrosse, soccer, whatever. And they come in and provide the coaching, the programming. They'll even do summer camps for you. And then now you can focus on the facilities and stuff. So he has a great company, but he also, and he never talks about it enough. I'm trying to get him to talk more about what he does, but he'll just bring on some of the country's greatest coaches. And then they talk all about coaching and how important it is for early childhood development. So that's our Thursday show, 1:30 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. So this is a little promo for that. And then we'll come back and finish up our conversation with Seve.
At DPRS MediaCo, we don't just create content. We elevate community through storytelling. Now, we're proud to introduce the newest addition to the family. Welcome to Youth Sports Mastery, the podcast where champions are shaped, not just on the field, but in life. Hosted by National Academy of Athletics founder Aaron Locks. Youth Sports Mastery dives deep into how youth sports can empower kids, strengthen communities, and build leaders. From coaching culture to recreation strategy, and from player development to parent impact, every episode brings game-ready insight from the people making it happen. Youth Sports Mastery goes live every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Only on the Daily Parks and Rec Show, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics. And powered by DPRS MediaCo. This is where purpose meets play.
You know, Seve, when that was playing, I was thinking that we just need to do a monthly Seve show. Because we're already 40 minutes into the conversation. I'm like, how am I going to tie this up? And I got 20 minutes left to talk to Seve.
No, it's all good. No, actually talking about sports, on a personal level. So my son, who I'm taking to college in a couple of weeks here, he's going to be attending university in South Dakota, studying aerospace engineering. But he did a lot of sports in his high school and younger years. The one he really concentrated on and made the high school team is the track and field, and then soccer and golf and others. He participated recreationally, but obviously didn't make the team. But he concentrated on track and field. But it's the life skills building and all that. So sometimes we forget that piece because we get caught up in making money or revenue or something like that. But then, I think we've talked about this, that offering free swim lessons to all third graders in every community should be like the norm. It should not even be thought about, Right. I think every Parks and Rec department should just do it, and whether you get 20 people showing up or 200, but that's a separate issue. We can market it more and so on. But the idea is that you teach a life skill, our life-saving skill.
Life-saving skill. Right.
Yeah, to a community member, a valued member of the community. And if you started at the third grade, which is 8 years or older, they're able to take instruction. They become your best customer too. As they grow old, they tell their friends, or as they, become valuable members of the community, live and work there. 20 years later, they also bring their own kids or friends' kids and so on. So continues that program, and I think we need to do that a little bit more. I think sports is a great unifier in many ways. So, I'm a sports person. So the end part of that story is that my youngest, she is 15, just turned 15. In her freshman year, she made the cheerleading squad. She made the track and field team. She tried out for the volleyball team, didn't make it because of her size. She's kind of size limited like I am, but
right.
But the funny thing was, when I asked her why you're doing this, well, my brother did it, so I want to do it. So it's that competition that you create inside your own families. That's the fun part. So
we have
to see that she did it on her own. I didn't have to push her or anything like that.
No way. And this was her senior year? That's her last year?
No. She's going as a sophomore this year, starting.
Wow.
So she's got 3 more years to potentially succeed in all of them. Yeah. So.
We have that in common then. I was recruited to the cheerleading team because the girls wanted guys on the team. And so they
Yeah.
went and recruited wrestlers and football players and that I was in wrestling, but I decided I wasn't going to do that so I could focus more on track. And so a close friend of mine, Catherine Wilkinson, was like, please come do cheerleading with us. And they recruited 12 guys and we ended up winning state, and none of the guys had ever done cheerleading before. And I actually got a track scholarship, but my cheerleading scholarship was a full ride. So I ended up
Oh,
not
wow.
taking the track scholarship because Kentucky wanted me to go do cheerleading for them on their national championship squad.
Okay.
And it was a way I kind of paid my way through college. So
No, absolutely. And that's what she's trying to do. She realizes that, it's going to be she gets the bigger picture. And here's the kicker to the very end. She also took AP classes in her freshman year
oh
and
my goodness.
got a 4.0 GPA. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. You do what you're doing.
Don't mess it up. Right.
So, and again, I bring it up because it's good to introduce our youth and the young in the community to different options, opportunities. And the more
Yeah.
you do that, and not just stick to what I call the legacy programs, where the same people, same families are, participating in it. And we need to make that effort as Parks and Recreation departments to go into these communities, especially where they don't have that opportunity. And maybe the elite programs subsidize some of the programs that go into the economically challenged neighborhoods and things like
Yeah.
that, because they might not even know that they can participate, and things
Mhm.
like that. So.
And one of my, I'm so glad you said this about the multiple sports, because one of my early guests when I went to the Parks and Rec, the Alabama Parks and Rec Association annual convention, they had a professional baseball pitcher that pitched for the Atlanta Braves when they won the championship.
Okay.
And he was like, Craig, I played every sport I could get in,
Yep.
and my whole life from the time I was little all the way up. And I said, what sport did you like the most? And he said, I loved basketball. He said, I was okay at it. I was amazing at baseball, but I loved basketball. And I would put my baseball equipment away and I would do all these other sports, swimming, basketball, football, and and when I got back to baseball, I enjoyed it. It wasn't just nonstop baseball from 5th grade to high school, and then I'm burnt out and I don't want to see a baseball again. It was
Right,
just
right.
one of the many sports that he played, and I think that's a common thread among. So if the professional athletes are saying this, then I think there's a lesson to be learned there, that we should be putting our kids in as many sports as possible to give them that variety.
No, and it adds to the whole, the brain power piece too, because, the more you learn about different things, because the way I learned, I mean, I realized that I used to play a lot of golf, starting
Mhm.
very young, because I grew up in Zambia, Africa, where there's, golf is a great outlet because you go with your dad, you're required to have a caddy. So we, the three kids, the three brothers, were my dad's caddy, so watching, I learned golf. And so I got good at it. But then I also realized one day picking up the tennis racket, I could also play tennis very well, because golf and tennis, as you know, you keep the wrist very stiff.
Mhm.
Whereas basketball or softball, baseball, the wrist is a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
So tying the different sports. That's why I could never excel in volleyball, basketball, or any of those,
Ah,
but I could do tennis and golf very well. And
yeah.
as side sports. But again, the technology and the medicinal piece, is there, where you can get the coaching and the guidance to also excel in not just one sport, but potentially two or
Mhm.
three other sports too. So because they have close ties.
Yeah. And then also being under different masters, different coaches,
Mhm.
it's so like when I think of the lessons I learned from my wrestling coach, my cheerleading coach, my football coach, my track coach, all different lessons.
Yep.
I still hold these lessons with me today. And so I think it's important to get your kids on different teams with different teammates, with different obstacles, with different ways to lose, with different ways to win. That's such a more robust way to educate a child in their early days versus just the same coach, the same team, the
Yeah.
same practice, the same drills, is to mix it up and give them a more diverse education athletically.
And you talked about, life, what do you call, lessons, so to speak. We were
Mhm.
talking about boarding schools and all that stuff earlier on. Just so my son, once he got into the track team in his sophomore year, and he was in it for 3 years, his whole diet changed, and he changed that on his own.
Yeah.
So no sugar. Oh, Dad, I can't have that. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I realized he's on the track team, so he's already thinking, that it's healthy, and and has a certain amount that he can only take, maybe just the cereal in the morning, but that's enough sugar for the day, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So again, the self-discipline and all of that also evolves when you participate in sports.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, diet definitely comes in when you're pushing yourself as an athlete, especially some of these sports where size matters, whether a big shot putter is needing to build muscle mass, or whether you're in cheerleading and you need to be a smaller girl, or you're a high jumper and you need to be as lean as possible because you're trying to clear more height. Like if a lot of those sports are won in the kitchen, not necessarily on the practice field, but it's the dietary discipline and that is almost necessary to excel at those sports.
No, that's what I told my son, at college, just, try the intramurals, and who knows, maybe you get noticed by the coach, or, just to be a part of the team, because, I excelled pretty well in track and field. So when I went to school at Iowa State, the coach knew that I couldn't make the team. Obviously, I wasn't that good or even anywhere close. But the point was that I could help the team actually excel, because I could be what they call the rabbits in those days. You kind of make them run faster, or do certain things well. I mean, I had a great start, so I could do the start well, and so they would be like, "Oh, this is how you need to start," kind of thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, maybe explain what the rabbit is. Let's say you're running the 400 and you're the rabbit for the 400-meter race. What is that?
It means that you really push hard, but then you tire out after 300 and you're done.
Yeah, you run 3 laps and you quit, and everybody else has to do one more.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so, but it forces the others to catch up with you and run and keep up at that same high level, and you still use rabbits in the longer distances, like 800 meters, 1500 meters, and 10,000, 5,000. And you see them usually drop out pretty close to the last lap or the last 2 laps, so.
Yeah, you see those guys, and they're just like, this guy's definitely going to win. And then 2 laps to go, he drops off. He's not even racing.
Yep. No, exactly. No, again, we're talking about a lot of these tie-ins, but the answer that I have is that Parks and Rec, and I think you've mentioned that several times, many times, that Parks and Recreation has a great role to play in every community, and how we leverage that, or in a good way exploit that, for the community's good. Yeah, what it gets to me, or where it gets to me sometimes, I see many communities, they're doing the same programs, same staff, like you said, same way of doing it, like in the 80s, same technology. And I'm like, no, you might think they're successful programs, but in my view, they are not successful programs, because you're basically doing the same old stuff that you've done for 20 years. How do we add new things, or, make amends and add different nuances to it, to attract a newer audience, because you need that for the next 20 years, because the other ones are getting to be of that age where they're going to drop off, so to speak, from participating athletically, or, whatever it might be program, so.
Yeah. And shout out to Dr. Joshua T. I'm going to butcher his last name. Medeiros?
Medeiros, yeah.
Yeah. So he was a guest on the show, and he has a great vision for where he'd like to take. So for those who don't know, he's the incoming
chair of the NRPA board.
Yeah. And it's like a 2-year role that he's doing for the entire Parks and Rec community. And he really wants to push it as, we came up with this tagline. It says Parks and Recreation providing essential is the operative word there, essential healthcare and wellness services.
Yep.
So maybe we can speak a little about that in our last few minutes of the show, is how we want to shift from, this is first on the cutting blocks, we really don't need this as a services for our community during tight budget times, but that this is an essential healthcare and wellness that is more the preventative side of what we do for our people, not the reactive side, which is more the hospital and police side. This is how we make sure we have healthy communities. So what are your thoughts around that?
No, and you've heard me talk about this too, that I think, not just telling our story over and over again, I think that's important. I think attending community meetings, so talking about master planning and doing those meetings, I think you shouldn't just do those meetings during master planning or strategic planning efforts. You should do them year round, or have a set schedule going out into these communities and keeping up with the learning and all of that. And if you're an accredited agency, in fact, doing ongoing surveys and things like that, participating in community building is an essential piece. You should be doing that on a regular basis. Yes, Parks and Recreation is, as I've shared some of the stories with our kids learning different sports, and other family members, and you've shared a lot of the stories. It is true, but how do we keep it at that high level? Is we do it in spurts,
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge in our field, is that we get excited about a great special event. We did it. Then we wait for 11 months to host the second one, if that. And sometimes it's maybe one off for every 5-10 years, So how do we do that? And then I think you have to find allies, because as you know, many communities are still using the word leisure, when elected officials or leaders in government and others hear the word leisure, they're thinking, oh, you're already way down the totem pole. You're not. Leisure means, it's the fun stuff. Yeah, we are the fun stuff, but it's also life building stuff and life enhancing stuff, and that's the piece that's missing in our storytelling. So I think sometimes we're our own worst enemy. I think you've heard me say that before, and I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just that we need to take the bull by the horns and take the microphone and speak to those terms on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky in my career that at least our city manager in Davenport, I mean, I always bring him up because he taught me a few things about how government works. Boy, I mean, I learned so much from him, that just the way, because he came from the urban planning side, so that helped maybe, but also that he already knew what the value of parks and recreation was, because if I'm saying that correctly, he was an orphan, and so he was brought up in the foster care system and all that. And sports was a way of, I mean, he used to show up at all our public meetings on his skateboard just to kind of make the point. And sure, it was a fun entrance, but it got people thinking, and you have and you relax people, and you make it more, able to share things, at the public meetings and all that. So Parks and Recreation overall, does do that very well, but we need to do it more often. I think we do not take the opportunity to do that more often. So.
Yeah. And I don't mean this in a derogatory term at all, but I'm blown away by how many Parks and Rec professionals were what they call themselves park rats. They literally
or parkies,
they grew up here, and now they're serving the community as adults. They're really one of the people that would classify themselves as the underserved, the single moms, the poorer kids. And they went on to succeed educationally and are now back as an adult, putting the best years of their life into serving the community that served them when they were most vulnerable. And that's a massive chunk of the Parks and Rec professionals that we find here today running our park systems.
Right. And, as I've mentioned this also before in earlier shows, I worked in Portland, Oregon, where Parks and Recreation was number one, but that's not the case in most cities. But when it's not the number one situation, or the most valuable situation, you create allies in your system. So whether you make friends with the police chief or the fire chief or the public works director or the infrastructure director or any other, leaders in the city planning department and so on. I know of friends that have kind of exploited the city planning department to help write their master plan, because they're already doing a lot of that work, community outreach and so on. It doesn't have to be separate. You're still part of the city. Why can't you help our department also write the plan for us, because you know the city well, you can, venture into the communities on a regular basis and so on. And then we also know you, so you can work with us and make that happen. So again, connecting the dots, you might find the best resources are your own city resources. You don't have to go outside in many cases. And again, I bring that up because many small towns cannot afford the $200,000, $300,000 master plan. To close the loop on the conversation we started, that I think the best way to do it is internally and find your allies within your community.
Yeah. And, that might make a good show. Maybe, okay, so shout out to the community. Here's some homework. If there is a fantastic relationship between a director and a city manager that is just doing well, let's just do a show with the city manager and the director and do a 1 hour show of how they work together.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I've been lucky, as I said, and just learning the nuances, and he understood. Like, I'll share a quick story. So I was a finalist for the Dallas Parks and Recreation job in 2012, and so it became in the paper, and the mayor confronted the city manager and goes, "Why does Seve want to leave?" And so the way the city manager changed that conversation, instead of a negative conversation, it became a positive conversation. He said, "Mayor," and he did this at a city council meeting. He goes, "Mayor, you should be proud as a mayor of a city that's the 181st largest city in the U.S. in Davenport, Iowa, that our director is a finalist in the 5th largest city in America. You should take pride in that." So this is what I'm getting at, is that I think we need to elevate our profession to the point where others are doing the bidding for you.
Yes. That reminds me of a quote from my business coach. Shout out to Cammie Miller. She coached me in business for a decade. And one of her other clients was afraid to train the people because, like, what if I train them and then they leave? And she says, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Right. No, exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, Steve Jobs made that famous quote that, I train people so they leave and, continue on the legacy in other places.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, man, it has been the fastest hour per usual. That's it. I'm going to put some pressure on you to do a monthly show with us because you've got
I'm happy to share as long as you'll have me and people watch and listen. That's also important. But
yeah.
But maybe next one I'll try to get some other folks involved that have worked with me or others that could also be part of the conversation. And I think you'll enjoy some of the programming successes we've had because of, again, connecting the dots in the community.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe let's tap some of that old network that you've worked well with, that you've learned from, that have done masterful jobs in your past, and let's do some shows with them.
Yeah,
and we can actually see how it went down. And I'd love to see y'all go back and forth. I think that would make great content for the community.
And that's what I'm getting at, because we can each share our own perspectives on the same topic or the same story.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so Chris is going to start making a promo for our meetup. So this week I'm nailing myself down to have all the details for when and where. We're going to meet up for coffee one morning at NRPA, and then we're going to meet Tuesday 4 to 6 before the big event that they have. We don't want to compete with the big event. We want everybody to attend that. But this way, if you've been on the Daily Parks and Rec show, if you've listened or you've been one of our contributors, we'd love to meet y'all in person. Me and the whole team's going to be there. So look forward to meeting y'all there. And Seve, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
No, happy to enjoy this very much. So thank you, Craig. Yeah.
Have an awesome week. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Take care. You too.
All right. So another great episode with one of the masters of Parks and Recreation. Seve has been doing this. He's dedicated his whole life to it. Has just a wealth of knowledge and has taught at director school, and just can't say enough about him and the lessons he's sharing with us. I think is just the type of people and content that we want to produce for Parks and Recreation, so that we can share a lot of not just the wins, but the framework, so that you could potentially duplicate what the masters have done and not have to start in ground zero. And this is very much the culture of Parks and Recreation, that this is a very sharing community, a very sharing industry, that if they've got something that they've built over time with a lot of effort, they have no problem sharing it with another city that they meet on the other side of the country to say, here's everything we learned, start from where we left off and make it your own. So I think Seve is one of those guys that I'm very happy to create content with for this industry. Okay, so with all that being said, we are going to be meeting up everybody in Orlando. I can't wait to meet everyone in person. If you see me out there, please come up to me, tell me about what you're doing. I'd love to meet y'all. Me and Sherry and Aaron's going to be there. Keaton's probably going to be there. Seve's going to be there. I mean, we've got a lot of people that have come on that are like, I'm definitely going to be there. I'd love to help you in those events. So if you see any of us out there, just stop by, say hello. Love to meet y'all. So that was a great Monday first show. Thank you, Seve, again for coming on. We've got a great lineup this week, and look forward to seeing y'all in Florida. This is Craig LeBlanc, the doorman, signing off for another episode of Leadership Series for the Daily Parks and Rec Show. Y'all have an awesome week. Love you guys. Thanks. Bye. Oh, hold on. I got to set the outro. Wasn't ready. I'm getting there. Thank you for your patience. Have an awesome day. Bye.
Welcome to DPRS MediaCo, the first media company built for the people behind the Parks and Rec community. We don't just cover on Parks and Rec, we elevate it, we amplify it, we honor it. At the heart of everything we do is one mission: to serve the public servants, the professionals who design, maintain, and lead the parks that shape our communities. Under the Daily Parks and Rec Show, we produce 6 powerful platforms. Leadership in Parks and Rec, a spotlight on directors, superintendents, and visionaries shaping the future of public spaces. Facility maintenance, where the boots hit the ground,
a deep dive into the systems, crews, and craftsmanship that keep our parks clean, safe, and beautiful. Young Professionals Network, shining a light on the next generation of Parks and Rec. Students, interns, and mentors sharing how we build a legacy together. Youth Sports Mastery, sponsored by National Academy of Athletics. This series is for coaches, parents, and rec leaders working to make youth sports fun, fair, and meaningful again. The Rec Room, hosted by the passionate leaders of Henry County Parks and Rec. This show brings frontline energy and real-life stories from the field. And the weekly Parks and Rec Post, our official newsletter delivering stories, insights, and community wins every week. We are DPRS MediaCo LLC, a media company with a mission to uplift the professionals who serve every community, every park, every day.